Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I'm Nancy Medoff, author, speaker, and coach.
And I'm Beth Knaus, creative copywriter and the owner of That's a Spade Copywriting Services. We are done being polite and ready to get real about confidence, boundaries, and self-respect, both personally and in the workplace.
Beth and I first met when we collaborated on the best-selling communication handbook for women, Unmute Yourself and Speak Up to Stand Out. Now we are amplifying our message and taking it on the road with Unmute Yourself, the podcast. Warning, there may be, no, who are we kidding, will be some adult content. We have a bullshit button and we're not afraid to use it.
So buckle up, buttercups, because here we go.
Hello and welcome back.
Hey, Nancy, how are you today?
I am fantastic. Beth and I are full of energy today.
Woo!
We really are.
Yes.
And we're on a roll. So we're batching. For those of you, I did not understand batching until I opened my own business. Batching is when you take like tasks and you batch them together. So all my corporate buddies out there, it's when you bang out all of something similar in one setting. So we are and it's highly effective. We are batching our podcasts.
A few episodes, yeah.
A few episodes. And today's episode is about, well, Beth doesn't like this term.
It's not that I don't like it. I just think it's become pretty common, and I hope that people will listen anyway.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. It's become very common in the solo business owner circuit. I know that trigger word for you is entrepreneur or solopreneur. So
the reason why entrepreneur is a trigger word for me is because people misuse it. So I own my own business. That does not make me an entrepreneur. That makes me a business owner. Entrepreneur is somebody who builds multiple businesses.
Okay. So they have to have more than one to officially be an entrepreneur?
I believe they do. Let's look up let's look it up.
Let's clarify.
It's a
clarifying. Yeah, it's a clarifying moment, folks.
Definition. Maybe I'm wrong.
Checking our resource.
That would be very embarrassing. Definition of entrepreneur: a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. I don't like that one. Yeah. One who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or an enterprise. Who identifies needs in the marketplace and works to fulfill it. Okay, I am so wrong.
But in the first definition, and both of them, it is like an enterprise can encompass other businesses, right? Like we hear all the time about parent companies. I think it can go either way. I think entrepreneurs are hoping to invent something new that hasn't been done before, which is, I don't know, is that impossible? I don't like to say anything's impossible, but when it's from someone else's perspective and it's not an exact copy, I guess it is original and creative. As someone who likes that, I do think that. So I think there's kind of like organic definition there. So.
Okay. But this episode is not about being an entrepreneur.
No.
This episode is about goal setting and what I like to call uncomfortable goal setting. And the reason why we wanted to run this episode now is because you should be listening to this in October, maybe November, if you're a little behind. We're going to launch it in October, and September is when I do all my goal setting for the following year. And there's a couple of reasons why I do that. The first is it's just a mad dash in the end of November and December for everything. So my mind isn't clear. And I also like to relax a lot over the holidays, as those who know me know. So September for me is really the start of my Q4. So I go September, October, November. December is a wash. I don't really count it. I should, I don't. And then Beth reminded me gently that actually October is the beginning of the end of Q4 and that we should talk about it in October. The reason why we wanted to talk about it was because I feel, and Beth will jump in on how she feels, that safe goals are everywhere. And I hear people in my circle talking about their goals, and then I hear people who I want to emulate talking about their goals, and it is a very different conversation in terms of not only what the end goal is, but what the point of the goal is. So, to wrap this up and then turn it over to Beth, the point of the goal isn't even the point of the goal. The point of setting a high stretch goal for yourself is to make yourself better than you think you can already be. That's the point. It's not to make, let's say, $1 million. It's to make a lot more than I did the year before, and to be very uncomfortable about it so that I challenge myself and that I'm continuing to find new ways to innovate. Beth, thoughts?
Okay, I think that that's really great. And I do think that that requires a certain mindset, right? So, and I'm going to talk about the book, The 12-Week Year, in a moment. So we have a very dear friend and colleague who is a wonderful business strategist, and she focuses a lot on helping people with goals, mainly creative people. And I'm not saying, I think everybody's creative, so I don't really like to say that, but I'm talking about, like writers or people who, that their feet aren't always on the ground. Like I feel like you had this sales background, Nancy. And so there's a lot of like what you have to do and deadlines and numbers you have to reach. There's a lot of factual, pragmatic things. And like, as a writer, it's like, oh, I'm going to be writing this, story, and just, anyway, we won't get into that. But so people who need some grounding in their goal setting, and it's a wonderful thing. But she does also support, pushing yourself, because she helps you break it down and taking it little steps at a time, so that if you don't quite make that goal, that you've done already at least part of the work. And it doesn't mean that, oh, I didn't make that goal, I'm done with it, I'm going to try something else. It's, oh, I didn't make that goal, so in my next 12 weeks or 90 days, I'm going to see what other steps I have to make to get it. So I may not get it when I initially thought, but now I'm even closer, so I'm going to keep going. And there is something about, having a goal and then just really neatly being like, okay, I got it, because either you picked the wrong goal or, it was just too easy and safe. And in our last episode, we talk about confidence, and we talk about some relatable things there, right? Like failure. What does that really look like? And confidence. And you need confidence in those moments, right? Because it's not that you want to fail. So it's not failing. And it's not that it's okay to pick safe goals. It's this somewhere in the middle, like you said, Nancy, overshooting and going for the overshoot, knowing that deadlines can be changed.
Yeah, and even if you don't get the brass ring or whatever it is, you will be that much closer to it and that much better than you were. And I also think, and I want to go back to the creative, your perspective in a second. I'll use an example from this year. So I set a stretch goal for myself this year. In retrospect, it probably wasn't a stretch goal, because this was my revenue goal for my business. I made it in like June or July. And truly, I'm like, okay, I get to coast through the rest of the year, which is bullshit. Should I use the bullshit button?
Do it. Do you have it?
Warning, bullshit alert.
That was awesome.
What am I going to take the next 6 months off because I reached my financial? No, I need to keep going. So had that goal been bigger, I never would have lost momentum. And I'm back. I'm in it. I'm doing all the things, but I never would have lost momentum. I would have kept going, and it would have been drive, keep going. And I'm a cautionary tale for people who don't set their goals high enough. Let me please be a cautionary tale for people, because it's hard to get back. It's hard to get back. And it's fine. It is what it is, but I will not do that again. And in my notes, it says, do not set a low goal and then pat yourself on the back. Right. I feel like that's what I did. It didn't seem like a low goal at the time, but maybe it was. And then I pat myself on the back. So tell me more about this. And I loved your little visual for those of you who can't see, when Beth was making the woo-woo hands when she was talking about being a creative. So yes, you're a creative and you're also a business person. So if I understand you correctly, it's hard for you to think action steps to get to a goal because the right side of your brain or the left side of your brain is the one that's dominant, right? Ish, kind of.
Isn't it the right side? I'm right-brained.
That's a detail. I don't know.
Okay, whatever. But yes, so I do have to, and I think I'm pretty good at it. Because I have always been business minded. I mean, I went to college for small business management, ran a business and, you know, a household and all these other things. But when it gets to the creative part, I'm really talking with my hands now. Sorry, everyone. I just need a little more organic, like marinating space sometimes. And not that I can't schedule that in, right? Because I should. Because it's nice to sit down and work on something and let it evolve and like lose track of time, but not when you have other things to get done. So, yeah, so I do need that sort of looser feet off the ground thing, but then I need to get my feet back on the ground to do the administrative tasks to get that creative thing going.
Do you have a process? Like, do you sit down and say, I'm going to set my goals now?
Well, I do if I'm working with somebody. Right. So when I'm in that program that I talked about, I will, because someone's like, oh, it's goal setting time now. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that. And I keep going back into the program because I'm like, okay, can someone just tell me it's time for goals now? So I just like that. Right. I mean, like you and I both have accountability partners. Like to me, it's like I have that voice, right? That common sense voice who's like, okay, that's not really what you need to do today. You need to do this. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I need to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's tough if you're a creative person or you're not a creative person, you don't really get this. And that's, again, I think everyone's creative. It's just how you see it. But, you know, your typical poster child creative person, you know, this is how it is. It is your brain keeps going, I want to go up like an air balloon. And then the business side of you is like, sit at your desk in your executive chair. It's just this back and forth pull.
It's interesting, you know, but to your point, for years, that's all I did was set goals. So like clockwork, at the start of every quarter, I sit down, I do my financial goals. By the way, for those of you who are listening, we're not even just talking about business goals. This could be personal goals. Excuse me. There's a book I love. It's called 5. I'll find it and link it in the notes. Where do you want to be in 5 years? I was out walking with my husband this morning, and he's going to retire in 5 years. And I said, if I were working with you, I said, this is what I said. I said, are you up for a philosophical conversation? Because I wanted to make sure his mind was in the right place. He said, yes. And I said, you know, you're planning to retire in 5 or so years, perhaps. Have you thought about what you want your life to look like? So we had that conversation, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because we're not just talking about, you know, I will make X amount in revenue, I will bring up my engagement scores, like whatever the case may be. It's also your life goals, and I think there's an important paradox there. So, do you set life goals?
Do I set life goals? This is a really interesting topic. I have started to recently in the past few years, because I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. While I'm not going to say a single parent because I did get remarried, but it is a different weight of responsibility there. Like you're the 24-hour responsible party. And it's just different, you know? And my husband was a wonderful step parent. But it would take a much longer conversation to talk about what this is really like. And you know, because you have a stepson and you have step grandchildren. And so it's just different relationships and its own entity. But for a long time after I got divorced and then, you know, lost my dad and a number of things happened, I had a hard time getting past a week, a month, you know, like it started a little bit at a time. And so now I feel like we talked a little bit in the last episode, I am safe and comfortable in my life and in my house now. And, you know, the tricky thing is that my husband is where I was, right? He was a little late to the game. He's an art teacher. He's a very talented artist and had done some other things and gone through the schooling and everything else. And now here he is, finally landed in a job that it's challenging and that he loves. So he's just starting to be able to look at the future. So, and this brings me to, you know, not only do your goals not have to be personal and business, I think a lot of the times we think financially first. And I have to remind myself, because when I hear other people talking about their goals, my goals are shifting quite a bit to not be about the numbers. I mean, do I love to make money? Sure, I do. Do I love to, you know, build my business? Yes. But at the same time, I'm in Dallas now. I've been here for 12 days. I wanted flexibility first before anything else. And this is exactly what I wanted, was to be able to get on a plane and go work from someplace else for 12 days. That has a value that does not come in dollars for me. So I like to go off and be someplace else and have a change of scenery. Or, you know, I want to have time to myself. I want to be able to schedule a facial at 3:00 in the afternoon. Maybe that means I work on Saturday morning. And so I have that. I have to remind myself that I have that flexibility and that time. And that's what I wanted. I didn't necessarily want $1 million. Well, let's not say that. It's just not necessarily my goal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and those things take money that I want the flexibility and time, but they come first, I guess. Did I answer the question?
You did. And it's a great segue to what was another really important point that I wanted to make sure we talked about when I was making some notes is, so this goes back to, do you really want everything you think you want? And that your goals change. And sometimes it's difficult to admit this and uncomfortable to admit this and subsequently adapt to it. So for those of you that are in the corporate world or in corporate America, this story will resonate with you. I remember I was climbing the ladder and climbing the ladder and climbing the ladder, and I hired a coach, and we were talking about, okay, what's your next chapter going to look like when you open your own business? And I was really uncomfortable. A job came along and I didn't go for it. And I was really uncomfortable with it, a promotion. And she said, you are used to what's next, what's next, what's next. And you need to get used to that is not a priority for you anymore. Climbing the ladder at this particular company is no longer a priority. So your goals should be more in line with what you want to do next. And it was a big adjustment. And I have this conversation with a lot of people that I coach, because a lot of people I coach, they're looking to do something different and they're not used to that. So you need to revisit your goals and your priorities. And it's a really, really, really good point. I still wrestle with, what do I really want to, what really is my, and I'm going to go back to finance. What really is my financial goal? Do I want to bring in $1 million next year? Yes or no? Because if I do, and I'm using $1 million as an example, everybody. If I do, there's going to be energy spent towards that, resources spent towards that, all kinds of things spent. Is that important enough to me that I will sacrifice other things for that? Or do I want to make $500,000? Again, a made up number. Do I want to make $500,000 and spend time walking on the beach with my husband every morning, or spend time with my grandkids, or be able to go sit in Dallas for 2 weeks if that's something that my kid needs me to do? It's a really big adjustment for people.
Right. Or be healthy, or be with my friends and loved ones, or whatever it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm realistic that a lot of those things require a certain income, right? And living within your means and choosing. But I think choosing is also about, what are your real wants? And I feel like, when you set a goal and whatever it is, and let's say, you set it and you're like, okay, to get there, I'm going to break this down into smaller tasks. And then it's like, how do you implement those tasks, right? How do you take action on those things that, oh God, I just wow, big brain fart. Just lost what I was saying. I had such an awesome thought.
It will come back to you. It will come back to you. Don't let perfection.
That's right. because everyone has brain farts.
So when you talk about personal and professional, one of the things I meant to mention was, so I have a journal that I write in every day. I made it. It's my own journal. I created it. And I say, what is my personal goal for today? And what is my professional goal for today? Because both are equally
That's
important
great.
to me. And it's really easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm going to write in my journal and who do I want to be? And how do I want to show up? And what's my word for today? And all those things, which I'm making fun of, but that I do. And forget about the business. And I can't because I'm in a business right now. And then it's also equally easy to say, okay, what do I want to focus on in my business? And forget about the personal. It's a balance. And I would argue they are equally as important. And I would say people probably aren't looking at their personal goals. The people I know aren't looking at their life goals with the same intensity that they're looking at their work goals.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I think sometimes we take for granted, right, that when we work our butts off and we make a certain amount of money, that all the other life stuff is going to fall into place. And it's not. It also needs to be implemented.
Mm-hmm.
It also needs to be done.
So you mentioned that you have to get your mind right when you're setting your goals. So I have a two-pronged question for you. How do you get your mind right? And what do you think holds people back from making stretch goals?
So I do think people are afraid of the stretch goal because of the what if, right? Because of the failure component, which in our last episode we talked about, failure is a lesson, right? It's just another way to say lessons. It's okay to fail at something. You go back and you try it again, right? And so I think they're also afraid to say it out loud, but I don't know the percentage, but when you sit with someone else or in a group and you say your goals out loud, there's a much higher percentage that you're going to achieve that goal, or get closer to the goal. So if you say, oh, well, my secret goal is this, and you don't tell anybody, then when it happens, you can rationalize why it didn't work instead of going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, I did this, this, and this, but I didn't do this thing. All right, I have my brain fart back now.
Okay.
I often find that, so when you have these tasks and you have these actions and there's these small things that you have to do, you have this to-do list, and then you sometimes throw all these other small things on. I think it was in getting things done. I can't remember the name of the book. It's like a famous book about getting stuff done. I will find that.
Just Google getting stuff done.
Yeah, so it's something like that. It's a gentleman who wrote it, and it's a little bit dry to listen to, but really good points. And oh God, am I going to lose this again? No,
Wow.
If you keep carrying tasks over day to day, tell yourself, if I don't get this done by day 5 or whatever day you pick, it's not necessary to do, and take it off your list. I think people have these lists, and this is definitely a set yourself up for failure, right? Is, oh, I have to carry these things. I didn't get those things done. And then you feel bad that you didn't get these things done. You know why? It wasn't a priority.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, oh, I have to do this task, right? Like we have this podcast and it's like, okay, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? If somebody doesn't get to something, the other person picks it up, right? Because it's team effort. And then you say, all right, so I didn't get to it this time. Nancy took care of it. Next time it'll be me, right? And we're a tag team. And I had other things that were more of a priority. So, and you can use that in any example. So that's what I wanted to say was, make sure you know your priorities, right? Get your 3 priorities for the day. And maybe you pick 3 priorities for your personal as well. Like, I need to change my cell phone service. I'm the person who handles that. I'm dreading it. It has been on my calendar, I'm embarrassed to say, for weeks. And then when I see that the bill is coming, I'm like, what am I waiting for? Or our internet is down. I'm like, for the love of God, what am I waiting for? This I can't take off the list. I have to get it done. It's my job. So.
As you were talking, so what do you think the likelihood is that you're actually going to change your cell service today? You have just broadcast it to millions of podsters. Are you going to do it now?
Oh God, I really want to do it because I know I won't get it done tomorrow. I know I won't because my kids will be home.
So here's the other thing, the procrastination about it and the moving it forward and forward and forward and forward wastes more time than the actual task. Like I
Yes.
just had a situation with that. The actual task took me 20 minutes. I have been writing it down for 3 months. Nah, maybe like 2 months. Anyway, I wanted to go back to something you said, or I think whatever you said triggered this. So if you state it, so let's say my goal is I want to be on a TED stage, TED Talk, not TEDx. There's a difference. Of course, I want to be on both, but my goal is I'm going to get on a TED stage and give my talk, right? So then I say it, I write it down, I say it more and more. I become more comfortable with it. And because I become more comfortable with it, I start behaving like it is going to happen. And because I start behaving like it's going to happen, I start gravitating towards people or processes or whatever, things that will support making it happen. And because I start shifting that direction, I start to believe it will happen, and then it happens. This is not woo-woo. This is real. This is
Yes.
real. You know, I'm sure when you wanted to start your own copywriting business, creative copywriting business, you said, I am going to start a business that centers around writing, right? It was probably something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the next day you didn't go out and do it, but you kept saying it and saying it. You believed it. Other people believe it. You start acting like it's happening, and it happens. It happens. It happens.
Yep, it does happen. I agree. I fully agree with that because I'm going to reference our last episode. I think that's going to be one that we bring back again about confidence, is that you have to muster up some courage to become competent, right? You talked about practicing and walking the walk, talking the talk about your speech, and then the confidence, right? And you go and you do it. It's not, I'm not going to say it's not the universe or magic or woo-woo. Yes. Do I think that there's an energy around that? Yes, but not if you don't have this first piece.
Right.
You have to have the first piece. You
Right.
can't be resisting all of the other elements and get there.
Yeah. And it's also naming it, you know, it's
Mhm.
naming it. And when you name it, it becomes real.
Mhm.
So, you know, I go back to this 5-year book, and like I said, I'll get the link in the podcast, in the notes. One of the things they have you do is sketch out what you want your life to look like in 5 years. And I found one of my sketches from 5 years ago, and it is exactly it was me standing in front of a large group speaking. It was me training in a classroom. It was me and a small person on the beach with Danny and one other thing. And I started looking through pictures from this year, and it matched perfectly. So it's, you know, I think it's so important. And I think a lot of people don't believe it. So I think people don't set a stretch goal because they don't believe they can make it.
Mhm.
And that's not the point. The point is that you are naming it, you're putting it out there, and you're getting closer to it. That to me is the holy grail.
Nice.
Nice. More thoughts on goal setting?
On goal setting, let me see I know what I want to talk about. This concept of rewards, right? And awareness. I think that when you achieve a goal or a step to your goal, even the tiniest step, if it was something that was hard for you, like you just said, something that takes 20 minutes that you're capable of doing, it's just monotonous and not exciting or whatever, you get it done. It's still a struggle for you. What's your reward? Is it a nice cup of tea? You know, if you reach a goal at the end of a week, like you connect with a client or a number of networking meetings or one-on-one calls or whatever, maybe you go get your nails done. Maybe you take an afternoon at the beach, you know, and if you reach that stretch goal, what are you going to get for the stretch goal?
Yeah.
What are you giving yourself for this? And a stretch goal should be big. So the award should be commensurate with the goals that you achieve.
That's something I don't do enough of. I meet the goal and then I move on.
And then we forget, right? We blow right past it. We blow right because we think, well, I had to do that. I was supposed to do that. It's part of my job, right? Well, not when you work for yourself. You know, I don't know if you can give the corporate view on that, but.
Well, you have to make your goals in the corporate goal.
Right.
you work for someone else. So if you don't make them, it impacts
Right.
it impacts a lot. It impacts.
But I'm sure like there are times when in the corporate environment where there are maybe incentives or there are bonuses
Sure.
or there
Oh, yeah,
are
there's
other
financial
things.
rewards. Yeah, yeah.
So they're setting it for you so that it's already there.
So it's interesting that you mentioned a reward. It reminded me of in this journal where I have what's my personal goal for today and what's my professional goal for today. One of the next question is, what could stand in the way of me achieving this and how will I overcome it? And I think that's important. So, if let's say the goal is I want to make $1 million this year, I want to book $1 million if you're a salesperson or whatever your corporate goal might be. What could stand, you need to brainstorm this out. What could stand in the way of me doing this and how will I overcome it? Because then when it happens, you say, oh, cool. All right. I got a plan for this and I can overcome it. No problem. It won't derail you. It will derail you less than it would have if you were like, oh, here's my first roadblock. No, it was unrealistic. I'm not going to do it. Well, you knew this was going to happen. So what's your plan for overcoming it?
Right. And that might mean that it takes you a little bit longer to get to that stretch goal, but you keep going, right? There's always obstacles. There's always something unexpected or, a positive surprise opportunity that you say, I know I'm working towards this goal, but I also know that this will be good for me. So I'm going to push it out a couple weeks or whatever.
Yep, for sure. For sure. I'm fired up. I mean, are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though you're creative and you're not, you don't really.
Right. Right. Even though I'm creative and I'm floating around like a balloon right now.
I'm teasing Beth because yes, she is creative, but she also runs a very successful business. So it's not, it's not either or, it's just getting the right mindset, getting yourself in the right place. I also find the physical location helps with that. When I do my January goal setting, I go to a little coffee shop down the road. I turn my phone off. It's a full day thing that works. Anywho, calls to action.
So calls to action. I think one of the things you mentioned was, thinking about both your personal and professional goals for the day, for the week, the quarter, the year, really give your personal stuff the same amount of attention that you give to your business stuff. Because in the end, when one is, when you focus on one so much more than the other, you're not really that motivated.
Not balanced.
Right.
Yeah. You resent it.
So I think that's a good one. And I also think we'll leave them in the show notes, but we recommended some good books, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to get the proper name of the book, Getting Stuff Done, and the person who wrote it. Also, I think I mentioned the 12-week year, which is a great book. It has some great ideas for how to get your goals and how do you deal with challenges. And like we were just talking about at the end here.
Yep, I like both of those. The only thing I would add, and it's going to be a little hokey, is to physically draw. I'm from New England. An image of what you want, and I'm reaching behind me because I have this. I'm going to show Beth. It's in one of my social media posts. It is a little stick figure. It does not need to be a beautiful drawing. This is it. Okay. So this was noodle, mind map, and dream. So it's just sketch it out, put it in an envelope, date it, whatever, put it in your drawer. I can't pronounce it.
Don't ask me. I'm from New York. Water.
Put it somewhere.
Zala.
Put it somewhere. And then whatever tray system you use, send yourself a reminder to check it out in a few years. And you will be amazed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You shared this the other day, didn't you, on social?
I did.
I saw that.
Let me share it again because not enough people saw it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you follow, if you don't follow us on social yet, definitely follow Nancy and see that post, and, follow me too.
Cha, where would I follow you?
You could follow me on LinkedIn as Beth Knaus and on Instagram as That's a Spade. How about you? I'm
going to send people a LinkedIn. I'm Nancy Medoff on LinkedIn, Nancy_Medoff on Instagram. Not really sure what I'm doing with my Instagram these days. So LinkedIn is always the best place to find me.
Awesome. And your website is nancymedoff.com.
Mm-hmm. And yours is that'saspade.com.
Yes, yes, it is.
Is there an apostrophe in that? I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
All one word.
Excellent. All right,
Okay.
well, that's a wrap.
All right. Until next time.
Until the next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. We hope you found value in today's podcast. We hope you were able to take a little time for yourself and perhaps think about how you're showing up.
And thank you for all of the great feedback we've been receiving. We'd love to hear more from you about what you think, the tactics you're using every day to speak up, and anything else you'd like to hear about on future episodes of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. You can contact us through our websites. Nancy can be found at nancymedoff.com, and Beth can be found at that'saspade.com. Or you can email us at unmuteyourselfthepodcast, all one word, @gmail.com.
We will see you next week, and until then, keep speaking up.